Thank you very much to Kausa for allowing us to open the show today. Just wanted to echo that. I think it's going to be a fascinating session talking about future audiences, where they are, how do we find them, do we even need to find them, and what does the future look like? So without further ado, I'd love to introduce you to my panel. I have Matt, I have Lucy and Doug. Ladies and gentlemen, would you like to introduce yourselves?
Sorry, I go. I'm on
Doug,
the end.
Go first.
So, morning, everybody. Well done for getting here this early. Thank you very much. So, my name's Doug Whelpdale. I'm head of insight at Barb Audiences.
Hello, everyone. It's great to be here. Fantastic venue. Thank you for inviting me along today to join the panel. So, my name's Lucy Bristowe, and I run the UK and Western Europe audiences measurement services for Kantar Media. I joined last year. Prior to that, I was at Sky TV for 20 years. So I do have a view on these subjects.
Hi, all, I'm Matthew Duhig. I'm the co-founder and managing director at FX Digital. We're an agency based in London, and we design and build and create applications for smart TVs and web and mobile. So I'm probably approaching this one from a more technical and kind of platform perspective. So yeah, looking forward to it.
Great, thank you. And sorry, I should have introduced myself. I'm Lydia Fairfax. I run a little boutique consultancy company called Triple Crown Consulting. Been running that now for 2.5 years. Prior to that, I worked at Discovery for 11 years, and I'm a reformed lawyer. So that was my sort of background in the early days. I'm now working for a number of broadcasters and sports organisations, currently at S4C, helping them with their future audience strategy. So this is highly relevant. And I have also worked for Arena Racing Company, who is owns half of the UK's race courses and greyhound tracks, and advising them on their TV strategy alongside Sky. So let's crack on. So yes, thank you, Kausa, for the intro. I think the first question I'd like to put to the panel today is, where do we think that these younger audiences are finding content at the moment? Where are they spending their time? And what are the platforms such as YouTube, TikTok, etc., doing to influence their expectations around what content looks like and how they consume it? Doug, can I leave you to open?
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you.
So we're in a very fortunate position in the data that we produce for the market now, that we're measuring beyond just the broadcasters. So back in 2021, I would only have been sitting here with data on what audiences were watching on ITV and Channel 4 and BBC and Sky and so on and so forth. But now we can break that down to include video sharing services, include pure play VOD services, whether they are ad supported or not. And we can see where those audiences are. And there is no doubt that if we talk about younger audiences, that we will find that they spend more time than average on the likes of YouTube and TikTok than they do than the average population do. But the counter to that, and I think that one of the prevailing narratives is that if you want to find a younger audience, then you must go and look away from the broadcasters. But actually, there is an audience to be found. There are 16 to 34-year-olds, if we take that broadly as a younger audience, do spend time with broadcaster content, as well as, and I should say, we have Netflix and Amazon Prime Video and Disney Plus as clients alongside the broadcasters, as well as Google. So I'm not here to defend or promote any one part of the industry. We are neutral, sat in the middle here. But the younger audiences will watch on broadcast. They will watch shows alongside things like I'm a Celebrity, which is massive for that younger audience. They will watch things like Married at First Sight on E4. They will watch things like the Champions League on TNT, and a number of other programs that we might care to mention. So yes, it is absolutely undeniable. They spend more time with the likes of YouTube and TikTok and the SVOD services than the population as a whole, but you can still find them in broadcast as well, in commercial and non-commercial spaces.
Yeah, that's interesting, isn't it? Because one might say that the extent to which that younger audience, and maybe even younger than the 16 to 34 in some instances, may only be watching linear TV as a result of a sort of a household pressure to do so. So, the Gavin, we talked on our prep call around the Gavin and Stacey Christmas special, which, has reached 20 plus million views now in the 30-day catch-up. One might say that a number of those younger viewers might be because they were forced to watch a show at 9 p.m. on Christmas Day because the family were watching it. Are you seeing that as the trend, or is it actually there are still these appointment to view events that the younger audiences will actually watch on linear or traditional television, so to speak?
Yeah, that is Lindsay Clay would not thank me for using the phrase traditional television, so I won't say that. But the appointment of view is massive. Gavin and Stacey on Christmas Day itself got 12.4 million, and 16 to 34s were about a quarter of that audience. So they were turning up live, but that is Christmas Day live appointment of view. So that is definitely a factor. But the other shows I mentioned, things like Married at First Sight, I can't remember whether I said that the first time round, but I took those examples from November. So outside of the Christmas period, where we might think that there are massive appointment to view programs, which mean that the main TV set is what is going to have something on it that maybe those younger audiences are forced to watch. So yeah, I think that is a factor, undoubtedly, as has always been the case. With what's on the main TV screen. I've got young children at the moment. My main TV screen has a lot of Bluey and Peppa Pig on it. But hopefully I might regain some control over the remote at some point. So that definitely is a factor. But equally, outside of the times where the family is choosing together maybe to watch, we do see that younger audiences are watching broadcast content. But we mustn't shy away from the fact that they are spending plenty of time with SVOD content from our friends at Netflix and Amazon Prime and Disney, as well as time with YouTube, which unfortunately at the moment we don't have a content read on what those audiences are watching on YouTube. I think we all understand that there's a massive amount of content on YouTube, and perhaps considering YouTube as one lump isn't necessarily the most helpful. And there was a story which did the rounds in the news recently about BBC One being bigger than YouTube, which I have to say is not a brilliant use of Barb data to compare one linear channel with a massive service like YouTube. It would be a much fairer comparison to look at the BBC portfolio as a whole, which would be to Netflix. Was the story, and BBC portfolio at whole would have a higher reach, and the same would be true for ITV as well. And that's as well the other thing that I thought about subsequently is that's comparing also the entirety of Netflix, and not all of Netflix is commercial, of course. There is only a subset of the entirety of Netflix's reach, which is commercialized. I think with anything, there's a lot of nuance in what you need to do when you're looking at these things.
Thank you. And Lucy, how does that chime with what you're seeing at Kantar and the sort of this trend towards the multi-screen, the fractured viewing experience that we're sort of living through now, and how would you then be able to advise the audience as to where you would go to find those sort of more concentrated audiences for commercial reach and other purposes?
Yeah, no, that's exactly right, and completely echo what Doug says there in terms of the challenge for us is to measure where they're going, where the younger audiences are going, and how they're consuming that content, whatever platform, whatever device. We need to be measuring it, because it's quite unhelpful as an industry looking at pockets of 20 billion views over here, 1 million views over here. What does that actually mean? That's not helping me to navigate and make sense of the journey of the younger audiences. So our challenge is to bring that together and make sense of it for Doug and the users of the Barb data. So yes, that's exactly what we have started to see. And actually, Barb have moved at such a pace to help. I think people forget how quickly they've moved, as Doug says, to be able to understand, for users to interrogate that data in detail around what is it they're watching on the SVOD platforms, how much time are they spending, what's the actual average dwell time, because that's really important when looking at young audiences. How much time are they spending with my content? Is it 2 minutes? Is it 5 minutes? Actually, on YouTube now, on the TV set, it's around 12 minutes. So that's a big dwell time, from where we were a few years ago with just a few seconds and a minute here and there. So that's really growing, mainly accelerated by the fact that more YouTube content for these audiences is being consumed via the TV set. And we know that that brings in kind of longer dwell times for content. So we're definitely seeing that migration. But I think the really key point, and it wasn't until I got stuck into looking at this data, because we're all so busy in our kind of day jobs, that we don't take time to take a step back. What is the picture? We get consumed with the narrative, I think, around young audiences aren't consuming long-form content anymore. They're just not there. They don't have attention spans. They're flicking, they're scrolling, etc. How do you engage with these audiences? But when you look at the facts, actually the average time spent on the screen, the big screen, is over 2 hours a day for 16 to 24-year-olds, and that's pretty significant if you're an advertiser trying to find engaging moments. A lot of that is YouTube content, as we know, and that's grown the most year on year, 45%. I think it's up on the Barb data for these younger audiences on the TV set. But as well as that, we're looking at other screens as well. It's not just the TV set. How are they consuming, content, video content, I think we're talking about here. But I think the key point is for advertisers, and we can see those big moments, of course we can. It's I'm a Celebrity, it's Love Island, and you can see in the data these big events, appointment to view events, were up year on year for younger audiences in 2024. So the narrative around, they're disappearing, they're not watching content, they are. You just got to work quite hard to find them. But the point is that those kind of appointment to view moments are quite rare for advertisers, and they're expensive. You can't all pile into these big appointment to view Premier League moments. They're just, it's not cost effective if you're a smaller brand. We haven't all got the budgets of Procter & Gamble, for example. So I think the trick there is to start to look into the data about where else are they consuming content, video content. And broadcasters are really getting really savvy about how they can do this. And I think Sky is a great example of where Sky News content has migrated onto TikTok, for example. And what they figured out quite early on was that in order to continue to engage with these younger audiences so they don't just disappear completely, was to create a TikTok channel for Sky News. So then you still have the authentic voice of the trusted brand, whether that's Sky News. ITV also do it really well with their news content on TikTok. But if you look at it, the tone of voice is really different, and they clip up clips that will appeal to younger audiences. They're not just putting, let's take a grab from Sky News and stick it onto TikTok. That doesn't work. So they've got a really clever strategy, and a lot of content creators are doing this. And you'll look and you'll see the tone of voice is different, the language is different, and they work really hard to appeal to these audiences. So I think, it's just got a lot harder to track them around the platforms. It is possible. And the content creators have become really savvy at how to do that and how to engage and appeal to these audiences. And then we've got to measure it.
And Matt, do you see this in terms of with your clients at the moment? So if a client comes to you and looking for a kind of a total ecosystem strategy, trying to reach audiences of different age groups, etc., does that translate into the platforms that they're wanting to launch products on? And how do you see that that trend developing?
Yeah, I think for us and our clients, the number one platform is obviously connected TV. But I think to kind of go back to the basics of why we're talking about the younger audiences, I think we're really talking about them because we want to capture them and have them be our audiences for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years, however, right? And there's a common misconception that the behaviours that they exhibit today are the behaviours that they're going to exhibit tomorrow. Just because they're using their mobile phones today doesn't mean that they're going to be using them, when they move out of their house and finally own their own TV and have a living room that they can watch content in. If you're a child or a young audience in a home with a family, your mum or dad is probably, owning that TV experience. I mean, I haven't got kids, so I can't speak for those of you that have. Sounds like it can be different. But I'd imagine you have final say, right? So it's not going to be surprising to learn that they're upstairs in their room on their phone or on their laptop consuming content that way. But as they get older and have their own space, the expectation is that they move of course, to television. When it comes to TV, I would say all of our clients now are seeing more video consumption on the big screen than any other device. In some cases, it's as big as 60% of the share of web, mobile, and TV. And then when you look at TV, it really depends on the market that our customers are targeting as to which devices they go for. So in markets like the UK, you might see customers want to launch on Samsung Tizen as far back as, say, 2017, 2016. LG television, the obvious ones like Android TV, Amazon Fire TV. But then there's also still a lot of demand for the Skies and the Freeviews and the UViews of this world as well, because they have such a strong relationship with their customer that our clients are able to talk to a Freeview or a UView or a Sky and get a deeper understanding of what the customer's like, and also reach them in their homes a lot easier. And then when you look at America, a lot of our customers are targeting devices like Comcast. And the great thing about Comcast is they have a syndication program. So once you've launched on there, you can then roll it out to Rogers and Cox and other devices. And again, our customers are seeing a good take up from having those partnerships with those operators because they're in the home, they understand the customer. So yeah, I think we're in an interesting spot where we need to remember that people grow up, they start using the bigger device that is in their home to watch content. Not to say they'll stop watching short form content on their mobile phones. They definitely will keep watching that. And then obviously the kind of region that you're targeting is very important too. And of course we can't mention where our audience without talking about YouTube. There's been a lot of talk of I think ITV and Channel 4 and other media brands and broadcasters putting more of their content on YouTube. And I think that's a great thing. Like, younger audiences are there for sure. And if you're going to capture them somehow, be where they are, of course. And if they're on YouTube, capture them there so that in the future you're ready for them to move to your D2C platform. And then when it comes to thinking about YouTube and D2C, I think broadcasters are always going to need to have that D2C offering alongside a YouTube strategy, because if you don't, you're just going to be at the mercy of Google, right, and YouTube, and that's the last sort of position you want to be in, really.
Just catching the eye of some of the people in the audience when you're saying that, and it's really interesting actually. Do you see if you have a younger brand that's particularly focused on a concentrated youth audience, do you see more interest in like the gaming consoles as a platform on which to launch?
I wouldn't say so, no. I wouldn't say so. I think Sony and PlayStation are very specific about what they allow on the platform, so it has to really relate to their audience, has to be maybe sports or gaming focused. And Microsoft's going on its own interesting journey with Xbox. I would say they're probably some of the rarer platforms we get asked to build for, to be honest. I mean, Microsoft's a nice, easy platform to build with. Sony's a bit more challenging, so then maybe that's why people don't opt for Sony as much. But I wouldn't say no. I think if the audience is younger, there's a more of a focus towards the mobile and the website, because that's probably where they're consuming from if they're not able to use that big screen device. But yeah, of course, it depends on the customer and their audience.
I think, just to add, I think you can see that in Barb data. So you can cut our data by device in use for the TV set. So we can see when people are not necessarily viewing content. We can just look at time, which will include things that we don't recognise. And you can see when people are using a games console. And I don't have the figure to mind, unfortunately, but it's a very small part of the time that people are spending with their TV set. So that doesn't surprise me greatly.
Thanks, Doug. Going back to you on this then. So we talked about a little bit in our prep call around the Fit for TV work that you guys are doing. Could you explain to the audience what that looks like and what's the ambition?
Yeah, absolutely. So Fit for TV was a concept we came up with to identify the content that's on video sharing services as a whole, And when we use that phrase, we are essentially talking about YouTube. In reality, they are far and away the biggest kid in the playground. But the idea is that there is obviously a huge, vast amount of quantity on YouTube, and it isn't all equal. Some of it is broadcaster content, some of it is films, so that things that are made for cinema, made for TV. Some of it is less wholesome, not the kind of things that brands want to be seen next to. So the idea of Fit for TV was that a piece of content would have to conform to 3 guardrails to be considered fit for TV. So it would need to be brand safe, which is always one that trips people up, because brand safe and brand suitable are very different things. Game of Thrones is full of sex and bad language and violence, but it is brand safe. You can advertise around it, but it's not for every brand. So a piece of content would need to be brand safe. There would need to be some editorial oversight. And editorial oversight, again, is not to say that it needs to have a massive production company behind it that have put months and years of effort into understanding what that piece of content is. It could be one person. It's just the idea is that you have planned the piece of content. It's not me walking out of the museum here and filming a cat walking down the road because it's wearing a Tottenham shirt and going, that's fascinating, and putting that up on YouTube. I haven't planned that. It's just happened. So brand safe, some editorial oversight, and then an attempt to adhere to prevailing regulation, so Ofcom in our case. So if a piece of content meets all 3 of those, then we would classify it as fit for TV. And I should say, fit for TV is a working title. I know that there are certain parts of the industry that don't like the term fit for TV. We'd love to hear alternative options if anyone has any bright ideas. But working title, fit for TV. So that the idea is there that we could label those pieces of content on YouTube as fit for TV, and you would be able to see that within the data. The other really important thing to note about this concept is that it wouldn't take away from anything that we are currently measuring. So there would actually be essentially 3 classifications of video sharing services or YouTube. So you'd have everything that we can pick up as people are spending time with YouTube. You'd have the content which is brand safe, because there's a lot of really good content which would be brand safe. There was when we did this as a proof of concept, there was a Mr. Beast example which would have absolutely been brand safe, loads of editorial oversight, high production values, but he promotes his own chocolate in the middle of it, which is would fall foul of Ofcom if you tried to put it on a broadcast channel in this country. So you'd have everything. You'd have what's brand safe, and then you'd have what is fit for TV. So you'd have 3 classifications within that. And we think that is something the industry, and I've had very warm reception when talking to agencies about this as a concept. The idea that they could look at what's on YouTube and start to understand the content, at least in terms of a classification, would be really useful to them in terms of where they are placing ads within YouTube, and understanding not the entirety of YouTube's reach, but actually maybe the bits which are more suitable for their needs. So yeah, that's the idea.
2 follow-up questions to that. One, how does that classification become actionable in terms of, as an advertiser? Will it be sort of embedded in metadata so that you will be able to sort of watermark the content that you've deemed to be fit for TV? And secondly, who is the arbiter of what is brand safe versus brand suitable, etc.?
Yeah, absolutely. Very fair questions. So in terms of how we would surface that, and I should say, we are at very early stages in this work. We could surface that within the data that we produce, that you can access through systems like TechEdge. There are multiple different flags that can be applied to data, so that in and of itself shouldn't be dramatically challenging. Then, in terms of who decides, that's a much bigger question. So, what we are working with our friends at Kantar on how we might do this. So, what we probably would do would be to take a number of channels that were the bigger channels. It's probably going to be a relatively small part of YouTube because obviously it's too big to do everything, and then we will put it through that filter. We're probably not going to measure any channels that we wouldn't consider brand safe. So if it's something like someone giving, shall we say, questionable advice on how you might like to invest in crypto, we're probably not going to measure that channel. But we'll have it at a small enough level that we can run it through the filter of those three guardrails and say, of the X number of channels, these ones are brand safe, and these ones would be fit for TV, and then we can surface that within the data. And we did this. We did this before we had Netflix and Amazon Prime Video and Disney Plus as subscribers. You know, we were doing this kind of thing with our data and surfacing that within the data before they were actually subscribers. So these channels wouldn't necessarily need to be Barb subscribers for us to do this either.
Thank you. That's super helpful. It really is. Matt, moving back to you for a minute. We talked again on our prep call around the rise of Freely and what that might look like in terms of bringing the PSB content specifically to a younger audience on an IP first basis. Can you tell us a little bit about the work you've been doing on that and the clients that you're working with on it?
Yeah, of course. So we've been helping a number of clients launch onto the Freeview platform, and have previously to that worked to help clients launch onto the Freeview platform. From my personal experience, as someone that really, honestly, didn't watch linear TV for the last 10 or 15 years, and I'm not joking there, which is probably a taboo in this room, I bought a Freely TV last year, and it was quite liberating to have an EPG with some channels. I've started really enjoying the 4 in a bed omnibus. It's just like my guilty pleasure. So yeah, I'm a big fan of Freely. I think, and my take on this might be incorrect, I'm sure you guys know more, but the way I see it is we're in a position as an industry whereby a lot of the revenues that are made through ads are made on linear, and they're currently stronger and give us more money than what we're seeing from the kind of VOD world as well, right? So it looks to me like Freely is an effort to try to sustain that linear world as we move those revenues over to a more digital world that kind of like helps us to balance things out, which makes complete sense. And I think there is definitely a place for linear. And as a younger audience, you know, growing up, if you have a television and you know it's got that capability to just hit a button, I come at home and I hit a button and it just pops up with something to watch. I don't know, and it's normally the 4 in a bed omnibus. It's really easy casual watching. And I think over the last 2 years we saw like the rise of fast and all this kind of stuff. It's really, you know, it's the same kind of thing, right? I think there's a clear need for this type of content, and I think previously when this kind of like dual hybrid approach from Freeview and Freely wasn't there, the younger audience weren't naturally being pushed towards that. But now that they are, I think they're going to, hopefully start to enjoy and sense a bit more of this content and get a feel for it a bit.
Lucy, how does that chime with what you're seeing at Kantar in terms of where the audiences are going, and does it help with the sort of the quest for unified, authentic measurement?
Yes, I think it does. And I come back to the point around we, as an industry, obsess about sort of language and terminology and platforms and what we're calling them, but actually the viewer doesn't care. And we're interested in the viewers and the viewer behaviours and what viewers are seeking in terms of content. And we're interested in how we're going to measure that. So the content, wherever it's made available for these younger audiences, you know, we're there to kind of scoop that up and measure it and make sense of it. So yeah, I mean, I'll come back as well to the point around linear TV. And if you look at some of these younger audiences, it's not actually declining as much as we think. And last year they spent, I think, 30 minutes a day watching good old linear telly and some of that content as well. And it's not just the kind of niche programming. We're seeing a trend as well towards, I don't think nostalgia is the right word, but there are content genres out there that younger audiences are seeking. So Friends, for example, I'm sure many of us in the audience remember back to the days when Friends was great, but these audiences are coming to it new for the first time. There's also something I saw about measurement for a Dynasty, and if you're as old as I am, from the 80s, Dynasty was a great program, but some of these younger audiences are seeking out this content, so it's not just kind of new, clipped up, fresh, engaging content. Some of those older formats still work as well, and they're still relevant. It's about relevancy for these audiences. They don't care where they just go and find that content. And they don't really care what platform it's viewed on. So I think that's a key point. And video is still as important in their lives as it ever was, maybe even more so. So yes, I think whatever the content is, wherever it's being played out, our challenge is, how do we measure that? How do we make sense of it? How do we identify the content? And to Doug's point, it's no use having an hour a day of content. We just don't know what it is. It could be anything. And we're getting really good. We've got really good tools. AI is being really helpful as well, and the point around can we identify the ads, the commercials, or were they brand safe, etc. AI is our friend, and we can do a lot more to harness and leverage these techniques to get even better at giving you guys, transparent measurement that you need to make sense and understand these behaviours.
I was just going to add on the point of Friends. I think Friends is a really interesting example, because you can not only watch it on Netflix, you can watch it on Comedy Central, and we see big audiences on both platforms, and happily this is one I have cut by younger audiences, and it's a younger audience on Comedy Central and a younger audience on Netflix. So, and that, which is totally to the point of the viewer doesn't care.
Is it on Netflix? Is it on?
Yeah.
I couldn't tell you. When you research them, they can't tell you where. They just seek it and watch it, and they don't really care. They're agnostic when it comes to platforms.
Absolutely.
And that's interesting, isn't it? Because if you think, unless you're saying that the Comedy Central, they're watching it as a VOD or a catch-up asset, then there are that viewership is watching it on a live, linear basis versus the Netflix, which is a true VOD asset.
Yeah, and I think it sort of comes back to the point you were making, Matt, about turning your TV on and the channel is there, playing out for in a bed, happily, hopefully. But one of the things we recently broke out was silence, which sounds like a really odd thing to do, and I'm definitely not going to go into the technicalities of how we do it. But we see an increasing amount of time with the TV set that is silence, where people are basically trying to find something to watch, but they can be liberated by the EPG and the ability to turn on the TV set and have a show which is their guilty pleasure or whatever it may be pushed up in front of them. So, another sort of idea as well, that we aren't on a never-ending, perfectly straight line towards a different place. It's messy. It goes back and forth. People who might have only watched on demand for 10 or 15 years come back to something we might say was an older audience type behaviour.
Yeah, exactly that. That's been my experience, right? And because it's also been amazing to see how, like, VOD and SVOD and Netflix's whole let them binge, that all happened, right? And slowly we started to realize that actually there were some really great things about linear that we've now lost. And then you started to see things like, I think at one point Netflix had I'm feeling lucky button, and you could just click it and it would just bring something up for you. That's just, that's linear. That's what we enjoyed about linear. We could just come home, chuck it on, and there was something on that was just very interesting. And for me personally, yeah, like you say, I've not watched it for 10, 15 years. Maybe again, I'm biased because I'm in this industry, but coming back and experiencing a little bit of linear has been quite fun. And further to that, like, you look at older things like, I mean, it's not an old thing, but like ads on SVOD platforms. It's the ultimate tool of discoverability. Like, how long have we been saying, we've got a discoverability problem? It's like, well, maybe you should have ads. It's kind of lots of these things that linear has been so good at for so many years are starting to find their way back into television, which is quite cool.
That's a great way to end, I think. It brings us back to the topic of the day, Back to the Future. Kaza, do we have time for questions? Or
You do, as long as Justin's all right with coming on 5 minutes a bit later.
Sorry, that was me saying we might finish early, and now we're going over.
Lucy, apropos of your point about nostalgia, there's a session on later about nostalgia.
Oh, that's what nostalgia, yes.
Yes, about younger audiences finding older shows, but for them it's not nostalgia. Yeah, it's the same content. Also, by the way, apropos of silence, there was an Andy Warhol movie I think I read about yesterday. That was 8 hours, literally just pointed at the Empire State Building.
There's loads of this slow TV as well.
Yeah.
People, there's a 24-hour train journey across the Arctic tundra.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And the Fire, the Netflix
Yes, the
Fire.
Netflix Fire, which
Yes.
got plenty of viewing on Christmas Day.
Silence is bigger for younger audiences as well when we looked at it, and I was trying to get my head around that.
And so
Is it
subtitles.
because they're doing other things? I don't know.
And subtitles.
Yeah,
as well.
subtitles as well. Why
Yeah.
is that?
It's garbled conversation. Yeah, that you can't hear properly.
Yeah.
Mm.
Fascinating.
I had this as a question
Subtitles is
actually.
a default selection now for, like, I would say anyone my age or younger is the first thing we're doing when we open a video is putting subtitles on. It's just always. Yeah.
Why? I don't understand. I'm
I
so
think
old.
I think it's a great question. I don't know, but I think maybe it's a focus thing. And when you're watching it, there are certain lines of dialogue that are difficult to hear, right? Especially if your television doesn't have great audio.
Is it, Matt, a carryover from social, where if you're watching
Possibly.
your social feed on a bus, you don't have
Possibly.
the sound on, and so subtitles automatically play?
Possibly. I mean, you know what? Let me get back to you.
need to research this.
I will survey my mates and
Yes.
to understand why we're all putting
The
subtitles
survey
on
of
the TV.
one, we need a wider panel.
Yeah, it's just you don't want to miss certain bits of dialogue, and I think without the subtitles, it's easily missed sometimes.
We can take a couple of questions from the audience. Nicholas back there. Actually, I'm the one nearest with the microphone. So, thanks.
Hello, my name is Niklas. I'm the CEO of Streamfire. First, thank you for all the insights that you gave. I wanted to come back a little bit more on content, because you were like talking a lot of technicalities, like where to watch, how to watch, but like only at the end you went a little bit into the content. And if you take the American market, for the young generation, trust in social media is almost as high already as its trust in broadcast media. This is because trust in social media went up and trust in broadcast media went down. And if we look at the American election, which was a couple months ago, I feel like you had like two big driving groups, which was for the one side progressive young women and on the other side conservative young men. And both of the groups were being not served with content by mainstream media, but by like certain influencers or brand influencers. And my question is, did like the broadcast media lose the young generation by trying to serve a one size fits it all? And what are your thoughts on that?
Oh, take mine.
I mean, in terms of in terms of trust in social media being higher than broadcast, from a personal point of view, I'd say that's deeply depressing. I think if you look at the US election, obviously we have no data on the US, but Harris outspent Trump on TV dramatically, and she just about won the older demographic, and the demographic of the audience in the US is similar to the UK in that the audience on TV is slightly older. So I think the money she spent there did okay for her with that older demographic, but unfortunately she didn't win the younger demographics, which were being influenced by social media. I'm trying desperately to think of a way to drag this back to data that we've got in the UK, but I'm failing miserably.
I can help.
Thanks.
I think from my Sky days anyway, we were obsessed with looking at viewing patterns for younger audiences in Sky News, and wider, a bit outside of Sky News as well. I'm not sure that behaviour that you're describing there for the US actually exists in the UK yet. And not all things translate directly between the UK and the US. And in COVID, for example, in COVID times, Sky News and other broadcasters, ITV, BBC, saw huge spikes in viewing of trusted news content for younger audiences. And actually, I was looking the other day at genres that had increased amongst younger demographics year on year. News is one of them. So watching news content on broadcast TV is not going away for younger audiences. If anything, it's increasing and growing. And my example of TikTok is a good example of where the traditional broadcasters have changed their tone of voice to try and reach and engage with these younger audiences. And you see that it happened in the UK elections last year, US election, big events especially that are going on globally. These younger audiences are coming to that trusted content. And so I'm not sure the way you describe it, I haven't seen evidence of that yet. Yeah.
I think the major difference between us and the American market is our public service broadcasters, right? Like they're taxpayer funded in most cases, and say what you want about the BBC, but they're meant to represent this unbiased view of news, right? And I think in America, they don't really have that. Like, so you either go to YouTube where you get biased information, or you go to CNN where you get biased information. So it's very different, and it's hard to compare the two markets. I'd say, yeah, that is probably what's causing that effect of people not going to YouTube for like, you know, trusted news, because we have sources that we can rely on here.
Yeah, that's a really good point. Thank you both for making excellent points. But there is literally no requirement for news programs in the US to be unbiased. There was. They took it out of their statute books 10, 15 years ago. So yeah, their news is increasingly polarised, and we're in the fortunate position, long may we stay there, where our PSBs are required to produce unbiased news.
Long live the BBC.
I'm so sorry. We're going to have to stop you there. Yeah, but thank you very much to our opening panel.